He was the favorite for 30 years. The day he needed saving, I was the only one who could. My father has a photograph on his desk that has occupied the same position for as long as I can remember. It is of my brother Felix at 17, holding a regional athletics trophy with the expression of someone who is always expected to win things and has been proven correct again. I'm in the photograph too, barely, at the left edge, slightly out of frame, present because I had been standing there when the picture was taken and nobody had asked me to move. I have always thought that photograph was the most accurate document of our family dynamic ever produced. Felix was the older by 4 years and the favored by a margin that nobody in our family acknowledged directly and everyone navigated around constantly. My parents were not cruel people. They were people who had decided without examination that Felix's needs were more urgent, his potential more significant, his failures more deserving of rescue. I was the one who managed independently, the one whose report cards were glanced at rather than celebrated, the one who learned early that self-sufficiency was not a virtue our household rewarded so much as a behavior it quietly depended upon. I built my life at a considerable remove from all of it. A career in corporate restructuring that required exactly the skills my childhood had developed without intending to. The ability to assess a situation clearly, identify what was actually happening beneath what was being presented, and make decisions that prioritized long-term stability over short-term comfort. I was good at it. I became very good at it. The work suited something in my temperament that had been shaped, I understood later, by years of operating in an environment where reading the room accurately was a survival skill rather than a professional ask. Felix's trajectory across those same years arrived to me in the dispatches that family networks produce whether you request them or not. A business he had started with my parents' backing that had grown impressively and then contracted sharply. A second venture they had refinanced through their retirement savings that had performed modestly for several years before the pandemic-adjacent economic disruption had done to it what such disruptions do to businesses operating on insufficient capital reserves. By the time I was 38 and Felix was 42, my parents' financial situation had been restructured around his failures to a degree that left them with a stability I would describe, professionally, as fragile. My father called me on a Wednesday. Not to update me. My father was not a person who called to update. He called because Felix's remaining business was 6 weeks from insolvency, and the accountant had said something my father did not fully understand, and that Felix, who had never developed a tolerance for information that contradicted his preferred version of events, had declined to engage with seriously. He asked if I would look at it. I drove to my parents' house that weekend for the first time in 14 months. Felix was there, which I had not expected, and which produced a particular quality of silence in the room when I arrived that everyone present managed with the practiced choreography of a family that had been navigating its own tensions for decades. I spent 2 days reviewing Felix's business documentation with the same professional attention I brought to clients whose companies I was paid considerably more to examine. What I found was not catastrophic in the way of situations that are already beyond intervention. It was a specific kind of fixable, structurally damaged but not structurally destroyed, the kind of situation that responds to clear-eyed assessment and disciplined restructuring rather than additional capital injected hopefully into an unchanged model. I told Felix what I found. I told him without softening it and without the cruelty that softening withheld would have implied. I gave him a framework for the next 6 months that was honest about what it required, decisions he had been avoiding, costs he had been deferring, relationships with creditors that needed to be managed rather than evaded. He listened in the specific way of someone who is not accustomed to receiving information they have not requested from someone they have spent a lifetime not taking seriously. I watched him process the discomfort of it. I did not make it easier for him to dismiss. My mother cried during this conversation. My father sat very still with his hands folded on the table in the way he sits when something has reached him more deeply than he intends to show. The business did not collapse. The 6-month framework held well enough that Felix was able to negotiate from a position of partial stability rather than acute crisis, which made the outcomes meaningfully better than they would otherwise have been. I was involved across that period at a level of commitment I had not anticipated when I drove to my parents' house. That first weekend, calls, documentation, reviews, conversations with creditors that required the professional credibility I had spent years building. Felix said thank you once. It was brief and slightly sideways, delivered in the manner of someone for whom gratitude in this direction was unfamiliar terrain. I received it without making it significant. My father called me afterward and spoke for a long time. He spoke about Felix and the business and the relief of the outcome. Near the end of the call, without transitioning into it in any way that announced its significance, he said that he had not always understood what he had in me. I did not tell him it was fine. I told him I appreciated him saying it. He asked if I would come for dinner the following month. I said yes. The photograph is still on his desk. I'm still at the left edge, slightly out of frame, but my father looked at it while I was there last month and said quietly that he had always liked that photograph. I think he was telling me something. I think I'm willing to let him